My name is Sergio Morales, and this video is part of our Photovoice online video series. And if you haven't seen our previous videos about Photovoice, especially our video that talks about the very first introduction to Photovoice and what it is, I highly recommend watching that video first. And then also too, I highly recommend watching the video about the Photovoice project in Pharr, Texas, because some of the things that we're going to discuss also kind of relate to that video as well. So I highly recommend watching those videos, and the links to those videos appear in the description of this video below. So please check them out first. We highly recommend that. And then after watching those videos, I highly recommend then you could watch this video as well. So now I'm going to be talking about the SHOWeD method in Photovoice. So the SHOWeD method is a way you could use to talk about the impact or the story of a picture. So when writing out your narrative for your picture, you use the SHOWeD method. And the SHOWeD method is widely used in a lot of Photovoice projects. So the word SHOWeD is actually an acronym, and every letter represents a specific question you have to answer in order to build out the narrative for your picture. So when I'm explaining the SHOWeD method more, I'm going to be using an example picture to explain things much easier. So now we're going to move to the first letter of SHOWeD. So the first letter is the letter S, and that represents C. So then that brings the question, what do you see here? And here we have an example picture I'm going to be using to explain the SHOWeD method. So here in this picture, you see a skyline. You see a city of some sort, there's a skyline, there's clouds that appear to be grayish, and that kind of signifies it probably might rain earlier. And then there's also too like a highway. You see a highway there as well. And you notice that the highway is flooded. So this is what you see in this picture. This is the first part of the SHOWeD method. You have to tell what do you see in this picture. Then this brings to the second question, which is happening. What is happening here? And then in this picture here, you could see, okay, it rained, but the context of this picture is that it's not just your typical rain. It actually is the rain that happened after Hurricane Beryl hit Houston. So the city that appears in this picture is Houston, and also Houston is my hometown. So this is also why I'm talking about this picture. So Houston here appears, Houston is flooded, and the context of this picture is that Houston floods a lot when a storm hits, especially when a hurricane hit. And in this case, it was Hurricane Beryl that hit Houston, and this is the aftermath of Hurricane Beryl in Houston. So this is what is happening in this situation. And basically, it adds more context to what do you see in this picture. So this part of the SHOWeD method talks about, okay, I previously discussed what I saw in this picture. Now I'm going to add more context of the situation. And then we're going to talk about the letter O. So the letter O is our, which signifies how does this affect our lives? So in this picture, this example picture here, you can see you have the issue of flooding after storms happen. And then you can bring out the argument that, hey, addressing flooding is a really important issue because it literally affects our lives. It affects our safety. We are at risk. Our lives are at risk when it floods, whether it floods in the highway or it floods in our neighborhoods. Flooding is a very high risk for our livelihoods. So that means it is important and we have to address this issue. So this is how you would answer this part of the SHOWeD method. So the third question is, how does this affect our lives? You take in what is happening in this picture and then you relate it to your own life and to your own community. So now we're going to talk about the fourth question, which is the we, W and the E. Why does this condition exist? So here, this question is interesting because it makes you think critically about what is happening in the picture and the structural forces that are influencing what is happening in this picture. So when I see here this picture, I see flooding, I started thinking, okay, what are some of the things that influence flooding in Houston? So that might be, okay, maybe the infrastructure in the city to deal with flooding might not be as good in the city. So because of that, it might be because the lack of funding, there might not be enough funding to these types of infrastructure that deal with flooding. So that might be one of the reasons why Houston floods so much every time it rains. So that could be one way to explain this question or to tackle this question. Another way could be, okay, you have the issue of climate change. Climate change makes the Earth's atmosphere warmer, and then because of that, especially during the summer, hurricanes are happening more frequently. And then because of this, more hurricanes are hitting Houston, and the Houston floods more because a lot of these storms are happening. So now that's also another explanation as to why these things are happening in this picture. So yeah, this picture talks about the structural forces. It makes you think more critically about what is happening and the structural forces affecting the things that are happening in the picture. So now we're gonna move on to our very last question, which is the letter D. In this question, it talks about what can we do about the issue in our picture. So here, as I mentioned before, this relates a lot to the previous question, which is like the structural forces. So now, based on that and your lived experiences, now you can answer and develop ideas on how to tackle a lot of these issues. And this question is really important because this is where you can bring your ideas, your own voice about how you want things to change. So for this example picture, one thing one could say would be like, okay, I know that Houston maybe it does not receive a lot of funding to deal with flood mitigation strategies. So because of that, the city budget should allocate more funding towards these types of infrastructure. So that way flooding might not be as bad as an issue as it is right now. So that could be one argument that you could do, one recommendation you could do, okay, more funding to the city infrastructure to deal with flooding. And another argument could be like, okay, the problem is climate change. So one way to deal with that is like work towards issues that address climate change. And this is where you could suggest some climate mitigation strategies. And this could be at an individual level, at a community level, citywide level, or like at a global scale. So here you could also list some climate change mitigation strategies or global warming mitigation strategies. So that way, again, because climate change also influences what is happening in this picture. So this is the last part of the SHOWeD method, like what you can do about it. And as I mentioned before, this is where you bring your own ideas on ways you could address a lot of issues in your community, and most importantly, to make your voice heard. So now I'm going to be talking about an example of the SHOWeD narrative. And this example comes from the Photovoice project in Pharr, Texas. So again, as I mentioned earlier, if you haven't seen the video about the project in Pharr, Texas, then I highly recommend watching that first. It might give you a little bit more of context into what is happening. And yes, I highly recommend watching that video first. And as I mentioned before, the link to the video is in our description in this video. So it's in our description below. So please check that out first. So yeah, now we're gonna jump right into this SHOWeD narrative. And this is a narrative that a young person wrote, where she was exploring her community and also to like a certain issue about a park in her community. So this space that you could see here is an open space that a young person uses. And this is open space. She uses it a lot to hang out with friends, to play, just to walk around. And this open space was actually it was planned to become a park. Like it's in the process of becoming a park. But sadly, the process has been taking longer and a lot of things have been delayed. So because of that, in the meantime, a lot of people have been taking advantage of this and they have been throwing stuff into this open space. So in here you can see there's like a lot of litter, trash around. And then because of that, the young person wanted to express this problem. They wanted to talk more about it and voice their thoughts about this problem. So that's when she was like motivated to take this picture and then write her story that would follow this picture. And this is her story. This is her narrative that she wrote using the SHOWeD method. And here it is, the narrative. Quote, I see nature such as trees, grass, dirt, and branches. I also see cable lines and trash. What is happening is deforestation, pollution, and overall destroying nature itself. It feels frustrating that people treat this place as abandoned when many people, including me, use this space regularly. Seeing big piles of trash everywhere makes me feel angry. Why do people dump their trash and unwanted furniture everywhere? Our systems for disposing items are clearly not working. This may be related to poverty and lack of transportation, as dumping doesn't seem to happen in neighborhoods that are not poor. I think a system similar to recycling should be created so people can properly get rid of big items they no longer want. End quote. So this is the narrative that she wrote. And now we're going to analyze this narrative and break this narrative down by each part of the show method. So here you can see happening our lives, what this exists, and then what to do about it. So here she starts off her narrative with what she sees. She starts her narrative with her seeing, okay, I see trees, grass, dirt, I see nature, but also I see trash, I see cable lines scattered around. And then that's when she then gives more context into what is happening. She says, okay, deforestation is happening, there's pollution, and overall nature is destroying itself because of this. And then that's when she relates to what is happening in the picture to her own life. And then she talks about how she uses the space, and then seeing all this trash around makes her feel angry because this is a space she cares about. It makes her angry that a lot of people are not treating the space well. So this is why she feels this certain way. And this is how she relates this picture to her own life and why this is important to her. And then we then get to the question, what does success? So then the young person, she then starts to think critically about what is happening in this picture and these forces that are causing what is happening, in this case, the trash. So yes, what I like about this part is that yes, she does mention that people dump their trash and unwanted furniture everywhere, but she then relates this issue to a greater structural issue, which is, okay, there's like a lack of a system to dispose items, or the system is not working. So that's why a lot of people are throwing the trash. So she makes a structural argument, but has a structural way of thinking as well. So she relates that individual kind of actions to the structural issues. And then another thing she noticed too as well is disparities. She says that in wealthier neighborhoods, this issue does not really happen, but in poorer or low income neighborhoods, this issue does happen. So she does mention, okay, this may be related to like lack of funding, like wealth disparities, access to certain types of infrastructure and services. So she also thinks critically in this manner as well. So then because of this, that's when she starts thinking of solutions to address this issue. And then she brings up the issue of recycling and the lack of a recycling system in her neighborhood, and then how implementing one might help alleviate the littering problems in her community. So this is what she proposes based on her experiences and also her thinking critically about the structural forces that are influencing what is happening in the picture. So this is an example of the SHOWeD narrative in action. And this is an example written by a young person. So now for a little bit of recap. So the SHOWeD narrative, there is 5 questions. So firstly, what do you see here? Then what is happening in this situation? How does this affect our lives? Why does this condition exist? And finally, what can we do about it? And then right now I'm putting all these questions here just in case you would like to practice on your own on writing a narrative for a picture that you would like to choose. So again, this is the picture here. This is the picture with all like the questions, and please feel free to use this as an exercise to write your own narrative for your own picture. And again, thank you for watching. Thank you for your time in watching this. And as I mentioned before, don't forget to watch our other parts of our Photovoice online series. So, and a lot of the links for the videos are going to be in the video description for this video. So please, again, feel free to check them out and learn more about what Photovoice is and learn a lot about all the different parts of Photovoice. So again, thank you for watching. Thank you for your time, and hopefully see you in the next video. Thank you.